90%. That is the supposed percentage of street fights that go to the ground where there would be grappling involved. 90%. That was the claim I was hearing almost 20 years ago with the rise of mixed martial arts and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in particular. This particular claim came from a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu family, so of course you could think it would be a bit self-serving, but nobody ever really questioned this, to my knowledge at least. At least they didn't do any study of it. I wasn't sure that was true based on my experience growing up. All the street fights I'd been around, they all started standing, and most of them finished standing, or at least one person standing, usually one other person on the ground. But almost never did I see people going to the ground and rolling around and doing any kind of grappling, wrestling. So 90% seemed way high to me, but maybe it had been increasing over the years as people learned more about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Thankfully, somebody actually just took a look at this. So shout out to the guys at rollingbjj.com. They actually went out and did an analysis looking at a bunch of videos, street fight videos. Tried to get about 400 as random as they could, and actually looked at how many, if they all started standing, how many went to the ground with some grappling involved. And so what do you think that number was? It's not 90, right? It's definitely less than that. 60, 50? There it is. 31%. That's the percent of time that two combatants went to the ground where there could still be some grappling involved. So what's the implication of that? If you are worried about any type of street fight or self-defense encounter, learn some stand-up. Yes, jiu-jitsu folks, I'm looking at you. You can't butt scoot and pull guard in a street fight. You've got to learn, at a minimum, footwork, how to evade an attacker, how to move to safety and be able to run away, or at least be able to slip some punches, be able to dodge and weave, evade strikes so you don't get hit. That's critical, because that's where most of the fights are starting and finishing, is with strikes. Even if you are a grappler, you've got to be able to deal with that. Somebody winging a bunch of punches at you, it's not like in class where you learn how to just go in and grab a collar and take somebody down. So that's a pretty eye-opening stat and helpful to know. So thank you guys for taking a look at that. Some other interesting information that came out of that study. Of the times when the fight went to the ground, about 60% of the time it was accidental or incidental, meaning two guys grappling or punching, and maybe they started grappling, standing up, and fell to the ground, or one person tripped or got knocked down to the ground and the other attacker went down to the ground with them. And then 40% of the time it was initiated by somebody, a takedown attempt. And so that was interesting that of the 31% of the time it went to the ground, only 40% of that was somebody actively trying to take it to the ground. But here's the most fascinating statistic. Of that 40% of the time that somebody took it to the ground, what percent of the time did that create a major advantage, where it basically gave them the fight, the fact they were able to take somebody down? What do you think? Is it 50-50? Maybe 75% of the time? You ready for this one? 96% of the time. That's pretty stunning. So think about that. That is, the person initiating the takedown almost always, every single time, is going to win. Most of the time, it was actually the takedown itself, a tackle or a throw, putting somebody on the ground. If it's on pavement or any other hard surface, that ends the fight a lot of the time right there. Even if it didn't end the fight, they were usually in a top position or able to scramble and use grappling, wrestling, jiu-jitsu to move to a more dominant position and finish with strikes. Only rarely did it actually go to a submission attempt, but it did happen. So that's a pretty big takeaway too. So for all the people who just focus on standing, if you have some ground game, especially the ability to take it to the ground, so work your takedowns and then work position, you're going to have a tremendous advantage in any street fight or self-defense situation. So those are my big takeaways that I got out of that analysis. One, let's start with the biggest. Don't get in street fights. No good comes from it. Somebody's always going to get hurt, sometimes pretty badly, and a lot of the time somebody else is going to get in trouble, either arrested or sued. So street fights, stay away. But if you are finding yourself in that situation, have some kind of stand-up, know how to use footwork to evade an attacker, know how to slip, dodge, weave punches, and then finally, learn some takedown game and learn some grappling. So wrestling, jiu-jitsu, judo. A lot of the takedowns were actually judo throws, not so much wrestling shots. So that's another big one to learn. I hope that helps. I hope other people found it as fascinating as I did. So important stats right here. Take it to the ground, you're going to finish. But if you don't have any stand-up, you're unlikely to get to that point. If you have any questions, any thoughts on this, any different stats you've seen, send them my way. Love talking about this stuff. I'll see you guys.